So thank you, Alphonse. Thank you to SMR for having us today. And thanks to all of you for joining our panel discussion, looking into e-commerce practices and habits in the APAC region. So last year was an unexpected and in a way a long overdue rite of passage into e-commerce for many global brands. So everyone felt the changes, but some businesses were already there and they were prepared for it. So we decided to chat with experts from those companies, both on the client side, agency side, and delivery businesses in the APAC region, which is known for its digital-first approach, to learn more about which trends are on the cusp of adoption, whereas the rest of the world still lagging behind advanced platforms and already established consumer behaviors. So today we have four guests. Let me introduce them briefly. First up, we have Delphine Dirks, Head of Commercial at Food Panda. Then we have Anatole Russo, Director of Food Service and E-commerce at Barilla, Omnath Kilakar, Product and Consumer Insights at Swiggy, and Tom van der Mortel, Business Development Manager APAC at EyeSee. Hello, everyone, and welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here with you today.
Hi. Thanks for having me, Sanya.
Thank you, Sanya. Happy to be here.
So since we have a lot of guests today, we have a lot of very juicy content. And this session is going to last for under 30 minutes. But we also have the extended session that is over an hour long with extra details, tips, and advice from our participants. And we will be sending out the video to this extended version to all of our registrants as well. So welcome, Anatole. You worked for Barilla in Europe, Australia, and now in the Asia Pacific and Middle East and Turkey regions. So what are some of the most unexpected regional differences that you encountered when it comes to e-commerce specifically?
Yes, thanks. It's a very good question, actually. I would say, first of all, so I've been working on e-commerce since a bit like 4 years now and mostly focused on Asian markets. One of the big differences that I can see is also the different market landscapes. So effectively, what you can see is different type of business models that are emerging. For instance, in Europe, if you take in France, the type of e-commerce, the main contributor is a drive. So that means that it's really the pickup in store. While, for instance, when you move, to the Asian region, which is a bit scarce and I would say very, very different from one country to another, you will have also a big emergence of the bricks and clicks. If I take an example, for instance, in Australia, 4 or 5 years ago, the market was around like 3 to 4% in e-commerce. And now it's slightly moving basically toward generating more than 10%. So there's been really a big shift in the last couple of years of the emergence of online purchase, which can take obviously various forms. So either the bricks and clicks has been developing themselves strongly toward e-commerce. And also you have, for instance, in the Middle East, the apparition of of players like aggregators. So you can, it's like the platform that will connect the consumer to the closest store. But at the same time, a lot of different players are emerging everywhere with all the different marketplaces, and obviously the strong presence of Alibaba Group in all the Southeast Asia country, and Amazon also very strong in the Middle East and in Japan. So in this whole landscape, I would say that in the region that I'm managing, it's really you cannot have like a one-size-fits-all approach. I would say at the end of the day, it's really understanding the different environment, starting mapping the different players, and trying to understand what are the different patterns, so you can really build a strategy.
And now, when we talk about like the entire path to purchase, you mentioned being first on all of the any digital touch points. What aspects of the online path to purchase do you expect will undergo the most changes in the future as e-com adoption rises in FMCG specifically?
Okay, so if I have to take back what is first the different digital path to purchase. So everything starts with awareness, and after you will go on the evaluation base, the buy, and then after you will have like the experience, the bonding, and the advocacy. So I think that it depends also on the level of development and what is your strategy for the country. But if you want to reach penetration, obviously at some point you need to really spend a lot of time and energy in the evaluation, in the awareness and evaluation. An e-commerce platform will give you an opportunity, you know, to really focus on the evaluation on the buy. Obviously, you will have some bonding, some experience, and some advocacy now with all the different rating techniques, but this needs to be coped, obviously, with what is your digital strategy, if you are present on social media, and what they can offer. Having said so, I think that every single of these pillars is evolving. So now you have like the emergence of KOLs, some KOC, and the environment is becoming even more blurred. So if you take, for instance, the case of China, in China, everything is englobed into one whole ecosystem. So there's not the traditional path as it used to exist before on things that I start from sitting in front of the TV, I see the advertising, then after I will go to store, I will see the same message and so on. Now everything is faster and the content needs to come to the consumer. So you really need to understand how and where you are going to communicate and what will be the tools for you to deliver the message to the consumers that you want to reach. So we are moving really from a mass targeting to really like a deep and thorough targeting of which type of consumers that you want to come. Having said so, I would say that the opportunities that will move in terms of e-commerce, and for me, this is also my expectation, is more on the experience. And this will come also with the different technologies that will emerge. So how you can give, for instance, some things that are intangible, such as a taste of product through a digital experience. And I think that in the next couple of years, this is where we are going to provide really something that is exciting, I would say, for every single marketeer or every single people working in the business is how can I give this type of experience of a product without the smell, without the taste, without the touch, but they can bring that to home.
Yeah, there is a different type of kind of barrier in FMCG compared to some other industries when it comes to customer experience, and how that will change is really I'm looking forward to this. I've been thinking about it, about cosmetics as well. There's some things that filters can do, but then there's some very central things that really need to come to them in a different way. So I'm also really excited to see
some industries, as you mentioned, are way more in advance than some others, and it's also due to the type of products that you are going to have. But now, particularly when it comes to some things that touch people every single day, because at the end of the day, people need food every single day. So how to provide this experience, and I think this cope also with all the emergence of new type of business model with a lot of super apps now that provide different type of verticals to be with the shopper at every single stage of their life. And this goes with the emergence of e-food service, how to provide, like a food experience, like in a restaurant at home to the end consumer, and really provide your product in a variety of way that will reach your consumers through different channels.
Like Anatole just mentioned, speed of delivery is getting shorter and shorter. Next up, we have Delphine, who is going to talk about quick commerce. So Delphine, you're an expert in e-commerce, retail, and FMCG, with also previous experience at Lazada, Alibaba, and Mars, aside from Foodpanda. So can you give us a bit of your background and also share a bit about what you think is the direction in which e-commerce will continue to develop? How should brands prepare themselves for an e-com first world? And what are some of the key success factors now in Asia? And what do you think they will be in the future?
Hey, hi, Sanja. Thank you so much for introducing me. So yes, I'm Delphine. I'm head of commercial APAC for Panda Mart. So Panda Mart is part of Foodpanda, but also Delivery Hero. And we actually specialize in 20 minutes grocery delivery in 20 countries in the region. So you can actually call us the quick commerce experts of the world. A little bit more about like what I think the e-commerce direction will go and how it will develop and how brands should prepare themselves. So quick commerce for me is a space to go. So quick commerce is very different than e-commerce. It is a version of e-commerce, but it's just quicker. So instead of having next day delivery or 24 hours delivery, we will deliver to you within 20 to 25 minutes. So that's the concept of quick commerce. And for me, that's the space to grow, especially especially for impulse brands that actually did not thrive so much in the normal e-commerce sphere. Categories such as snacks, beverages, alcohol, but also more planned purchases are now going on our platforms, such as diaper, household, milk formula. They are growing as we speak. We actually really think that like quick commerce is the way to go. We do see that alcohol, snacks, beverages were more impulse and not thriving so much. And I do feel that's definitely the way to go.
Let's take a step back. What do you think are the main distinctions that you see in e-commerce practices in Asia versus Europe or the US in terms of category spot or integrated platforms, strategy differences, whatever you think stands out the most?
Yes, so I do see a big difference. And again, difference between quick commerce and e-commerce is I do see that regions such as APAC are definitely moving stronger in terms of quick commerce than other regions such as Europe and US. So as I mentioned, categories in quick commerce are more impulse, while categories in e-commerce are more long tail planned. The range is much wider. You would buy your television on e-commerce, but on quick commerce, you would go for a more shorter delivery time from categories that are more impulse. So I do see Asia and Europe Asia and US are definitely evolving into long tail planned wider, while Asia is much more going into quick commerce impulse.
And can you tell us more about how does e-commerce or quick commerce change category management? Are the new emerging categories set up for quicker growth online in comparison to brick and mortar?
So in comparison to brick and mortar, I do feel brick and mortar is developing well, but we do see shoppers from brick and mortar moving into online as well. In terms of categories, you can compare us as a brick and mortar. As I mentioned, slightly more impulse on quick commerce, but we do see a big trend on planned. So as I mentioned, planned purchases are your pet care, your mother and baby, your household, but we do see these coming up as well. So what that means is that our shopper becomes more and more used to the 20 minutes delivery, a little bit more spoiled in that way, and tend to want to buy their planned purchases and get it delivered within 20 minutes.
So do you think there will be even further integration of online and brick and mortar? Like we see a lot of changes happened last year. Do you think that was the push that we needed towards a new retail concept?
Yes, so I do see there is always an integration possible. So where a brick and mortar has owns their own stock, has their distribution centers, has fulfillment centers, they do have all the operations ready. Of course, they don't really have the platform or the app or the technology ready, and that's where we are ahead. So we do have the technology ready, and operations is something we can learn from brick and mortar. Of course, that's where you will always have online and offline working very closely together. I do believe there will never be an or, it will always be and. There will be online and brick and mortar. One of the challenges, for example, that brick and mortar can solve very well for online is that brick and mortar can more easily attract new customers because you just have the locations outside and you get the visibility from your shoppers when they walk on the street, and they tend to walk into your store more easily. While with an online store, it's more difficult to catch people's attention. They already need to go on their phone to be able to be grasped. So what we do see is players at Alibaba developing a new retail concept, meaning that they will go offline with their online brands and concepts to really attract new customers and, let's say, slow movers into their platform.
And what do you think can the US and European e-commerce platforms learn from Asian ones? Is Asia the harbinger of what's coming? And do you think will e-commerce practices over there move closer towards those in Asia or the other way around?
Yeah, that's a very valid question. So I do see Asia is always coming up with the ideas first, testing it out, and then these trends move to Europe and US. US tends to pick it up slightly faster than Europe, but this time around with quick commerce, we do see a lot of European players picking up the concept slightly faster than in the US. But generally, I see APAC is always first in discovering e-commerce trends. And that's why I'm so excited to be in this location, to always be at the heartbeat of the changes in e-commerce.
Thank you so much for your time and expertise. Now we're going to hear Amnath, who is going to be talking about India. This market is at a different developmental stage than some other, like Singapore, for example, but it has some very, very interesting specificities that we can all learn from. Hello, Amnath, and welcome. Let's go big on the first question. So can you share a bit about what you think is the direction in which e-commerce will continue to develop and how brands should prepare themselves for an e-com first world?
So from an e-commerce perspective, specifically, the growth story for India was all, and I'm specifically talking about India here. So the growth story for India was always coming from the smaller towns, right? At the end of the day, if you look at any funnel, right, which one can think of, right? So your cost of acquisition for a customer, that's always been the most critical aspect of it, specifically when it comes for e-commerce, because e-commerce, I still believe in India is like we are in day one, right, or day zero, whatever you want to call it, because we're definitely not as evolved as like say a China or a US or even some of the European markets, Western European markets specifically, right? But what I would like to emphasize here is that the growth story has always coming from the tier 2 and tier 3 plus markets, right? When internet sort of got democratized with the advent of like quote unquote free internet by Geo, right? When I think that was way back in 2016 and 2016, if I'm not wrong, right? And post that, e-commerce has been exposed to a really large diaspora, primarily coming from the tier 2 and tier 3 towns. People like you and I, if you're living like in the say the capital cities of the states, or the top 8 metros, like how we like to call it, correct? Those folks were always shopping on e-commerce. Right now, their basket size has increased, their frequency has increased, their average order value has increased. The kind of items they order from e-commerce now has expanded, right? For that kind of an audience. Like say, for just hypothetical example here, if I was comfortable ordering for like, say, a pair of shoes or buying a mobile phone online, right? Now I am willing to buy like maybe like, a chair online, like or maybe I'm willing to buy even grocery online or some healthcare items online, right? Like so for me, for a person like me who's sitting in a metro, right? For us, it's become more about expansion of horizontal, right? Getting into more and more categories. For people who are there in the tier 2 and tier 3 towns, that's the maximum bulk of people actually who are coming in, right? They are getting exposed to e-commerce first, right? And after Geo, after I would say the pandemic, a lot of these folks are in a way, I don't want to call it forced, but in a way compelled to go and explore options online. And like touch wood, hopefully we'll get out of this pandemic really soon. But I really believe that the baseline has definitely been shifted, because the kind of convenience, the kind of discounts, the kind of selection which is available online, right? And an audience who wants options or who wants those deals has now been exposed to this beautiful world of e-commerce, right? Correct. For them, it's not going to be easy to going back to like going to their normal usual mom and pop store and buying those particular items, because if we do, I like I said, I strongly believe that if we do the hygiene, whatever is expected from the consumer properly, right? Definitely for the next 5 years, definitely for the next 10 years, the growth story for anybody who's there in e-commerce will definitely like grow.
I wanted to ask you a more research specific question.
Sure.
About what is the relationship between consumer and user insights that are gained from classical research and those gained from passive data? And how do you kind of combine them for the best performance?
Oh man, that's a really great question because just to give you a little bit of a background of myself as well, right? Yes, I have been like a proper customized quant and qualitative researcher all my life, right? When I worked at Flipkart for almost three and a half years, I was also a part of the consumer research and insights team there as well, right? And now I am a part of the research and insights team here at Swiggy. So my work and my day-to-day is still rooted very much in the said classical research techniques which you're talking about. I think the application of it differs everywhere, correct? So if your question here is that yes, does traditional research play a role? 100% it does. There is no doubt about it, right? Now, can we do away with it? I don't think we can, if you ask me, because let's break it down, right? So if there are two different paths or there are two different streams of data from where you can generate level of insights, correct? Very broadly, if you classify them, right? One would be data which is collected through primary research. I'm not getting into how is it collected right now, correct? But just data which is coming from an outside in kind of perspective. So people, like, we are trying to get data from somewhere. Second aspect is data which we have from our own systems which we have designed, and like the data which we've collected right from the funnel conversions, visits, like any other indicators which we would have essentially, right, which we have collected. So we have our in-platform or on-platform data, and we have data which is collected, right? Now, magic essentially happens when you marry both those data sets.
Yeah, it really fits with what we think of when we think about e-commerce research and the way we do it. There's always this need for the why, and there's always this need to understand behavior. Yes, couple it with, you know, passive data and passive tracking, but there's a need to marry all of those methods together to get, they just have an added value.
Us being researchers, right, a lot of time we tend to get very academic about it and we want to do it like in a proper way and, you know, ensure that. But what's the purpose of doing it in the first place, right? The purpose of doing it in the first place is to generate some actionable insights or some action or some pilot or some AB or some initiative, I would like to say, right, which essentially moves certain KPIs, right? Whether it's conversion, whether it's time spent on the app, anything it might be, right? At the end of the day, you are pushing the envelope in terms of getting that additional delta or getting the, like, pulling people's loyalty or consideration more towards you. So I think that's the name of the game at the end of the day.
Thank you so much, Amnas. Do you have any like closing thoughts, any other like tips or anything you'd like to share with our audience today?
So first of all, really appreciate, thank you for having me here, right, and giving me a platform to put forth my views, whatever. I hope they were helpful to your audiences. Just like the only closing thought which I had, and which was one point which I think missed in my initial question, was because e-commerce is still in the growth phase and we say that we are still in day one or day zero, right? Okay, so customer acquisition is still always going to be important, right? And it's right up there, correct? I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon because we're still building an ecosystem, right? Okay, even though there is a substantial chunk of users which are already available, but we are still building an ecosystem. But mark my words here, but it's not just going to be about customer acquisition for the next, say, 5 years, 10 years. Now that whole model is going to move from say like a CAC kind of understanding, right, to more of a LTV, right, where what's going to happen is, like, you have to shift your focus, right, to finding opportunities for, you know, recurring a low customer acquisition cost and a higher perceived value.
Thank you again so much. It was great chatting to you.
Same here, likewise.
And finally, we have Tom here with us to share an agency perspective on how to tackle all of this. This is a huge area with many different levels we can test. So let's hear what Tom has to share. Okay, so Tom, As we speak today, we're also participating in another event on the other side of the globe, which is the IAX Behavior event. And there we're talking to Microsoft about e-commerce testing. And it's a really fun coincidence that both of these events are on the same day. But it actually speaks, I think, to a larger trend of e-commerce being more and more kind of a necessary field to examine deeply, just like we do with packaging, just like we do with so many other things that we're really good at. But with e-commerce, there's so many moving parts. So is there anything that people should know about how to apply behavioral specifically to e-commerce research? What kind of approach to take?
Thank you, Sanya. Yes, that's indeed an interesting question, and also a question that a lot of our clients are facing. And from our experience, there are actually 3 levels of understanding that you need to know about to win in e-commerce. The first level is really a strategic level. It's about understanding where your customers are going to shop, who your customers are, why they are choosing a particular platform. And of course, in the case that you have your own platform, it's about understanding better who exactly your users are. The second level of understanding, it's about the specific behavior of your shoppers on a specific e-commerce platform. It's about how they navigate to a certain product or a category, how they use menu or search to find a certain product or category, and so on. The third level is really a tactical level in which you gain understanding on how to use different e-commerce assets. It's about, for example, what to put as an image to represent your product, how to use different ads or banners in terms of understanding what the content is and what placement works best. Different elements of a product details page can lead to more interaction with your product, and it's about understanding these kind of elements. And so in general, it's about optimizing those elements to ensure that you have the most visibility and clicks for your product or for your promotion, and ultimately the most add to carts. What we often see is that there's a lot of focus on the first level, and it's of course a crucial level. Anatole spoke about the importance of understanding the different persona of shoppers, and certainly in APAC, where all the markets are very different. Nevertheless, it's also a level that quite some of our clients already have a fairly good understanding of. In that case, it can be interesting to look at other sides of the pyramid and withstand the temptation to just keep digging deeper in the first part. You can then take a bottom-up approach and start looking at some of these tactical elements to make sure that your product presentation, your ads, your promos are designed for optimal visibility and clicks. As Omnat also mentioned, the advantage of this approach is that you have an immediate win with a direct actionable result and also a sales impact. And this knowledge is often transferable to other products or platforms too. And so therefore, it's important to cover all levels of the pyramid, and at a certain point, just start to test something out to see how customers react to it and to be able to bring an immediate improvement.
Yeah, so in a way, it's important to kind of narrow down your question, correct? And not just try to get all the answers in a single study, right?
Yeah, that's certainly the case. And because trying to get all the answers in a single study often leads to results that the client already knows, while we can actually, it is better to really zoom in on a certain specific element that you can improve and that will lead to immediate results and build a very good knowledge of what drives visibility and what drives clicks from there.
And now you mentioned visibility. My next question was actually about behavioral methods. Why is it important, in your opinion, to test e-commerce with behavioral? There's a lot of, since it's all digital, it's all online, it's very tempting to just go let's collect all the best data we can. So what's the added value of using behavioral methods on e-commerce pages of any kind?
Indeed, Sanya, that's an interesting question. Behavioral testing has become fairly well established in brick and mortar context, but not as much in e-commerce testing. Maybe this is also because a lot of usage data is already more readily available. So let us first establish why experimental testing still has a place in the e-commerce world. Using the so-called passive data has a lot of advantages, but also some limitations. Like Omnat mentioned before, Passive data can bring a wealth of information on how a customer shops, how he or she arrives at certain purchase, at which stages he or she abandons the journey. But it also gives you insight into the broader context of the shopper journey. Which pages did they visit in the days or weeks prior to the purchase, and how did they ultimately end up on the platform? However, it's important to understand that this leads to an enormous amount of data, and that very good analytics capabilities are required to make sense of it all. Secondly, it brings insights in what is happening on the platform, but not always as much in why. Why shoppers choose a certain product, why do they choose to abandon it, for example. To understand these better, experimental research can still be used. For this, it is important to make sure the research is, of course, behavioral. We know that relying on stated behavior surveys can lead to a very important misunderstanding of real shopping behavior. And secondly, it's crucial to make sure that this research happens in a realistic context, to make sure that the respondent reacts as he or she would do in a real shopping environment.
Thank you again to Delphine, Amnath, Anatol, and Tom. Thanks to all of you who joined us today. I hope you found value in this session. We're going to be sending out the extended version in the next 24 hours. Please, if you have any kind of questions for us or any of our speakers, feel free to reach out to us via email.